This coming summer, a full facilities assessment will be performed on all North Kingstown schools. This assessment will look at the physical conditions of the building systems to determine if they are in good working order. However, in addition to assessing buildings for their structural integrity or code compliance, understanding how well these facilities support teaching and learning and create supportive, welcoming environments for students is a critical component of the facilities master plan process. In early summer of 2021, the North Kingstown school facilities were toured to review how well they incorporate New Century learning. Both internal and external spaces were considered. These walkthroughs focused on the physical qualities of these spaces that are critical to their educational suitability, looking at the types of spaces provided, the size of the spaces, classroom amenities such as natural light, access to the outdoors, technology, teaching surfaces, acoustics, furnishings, and opportunities for different styles of instruction and learning. We'll review these findings, starting with the elementary schools. First, let's talk about classrooms. Although the average size varies from building to building, by and large, the typical classroom size for grades 1 through 5 in North Kingstown elementary schools is not too bad. Some schools have an average classroom size on par with the RIDE recommendation of 950 square feet, while others are slightly below this recommended square footage. Forest Park has the smallest average classroom size of any of the elementaries in the district. State recommendations for kindergarten classrooms are larger at 1,200 square feet, and unfortunately, North Kingstown kindergarten classrooms are below that standard across the board. Most, if not all, classrooms have been outfitted with current technology such as smartboards and LED lighting. While these spaces have been well maintained, the finishes are old, dated, and in many cases need of replacement. Additionally, the sizes of the spaces and their furnishings do not promote flexibility needed for modern teaching and learning, limiting the teacher's ability to teach and the student's ability to learn. Exposure to natural light in the classroom is critical as it positively impacts students' mental health, mood, and cognitive ability. One challenge with many North Kingstown school buildings is the lack of natural light. This is particularly true at facilities that have open classroom plans, including Stony Lane, Quidnesset, and the addition at Fishing Cove. These mid-century structures were designed with limited windows to the exterior, and the spaces located at the interior of the building are completely deprived of natural light. Another challenge is the inequity between buildings in the district. Not all buildings are equipped with the same types of spaces. At the elementary level, Stony Lane, Quidnesset, and Hamilton schools have large gymnasiums and well-sized cafeterias to meet their physical education and student dining needs. While Fishing Cove and Forest Park are served only by a single multi-purpose room for all PE and dining needs. Not only does this make scheduling tight, but it is too small a space for proper physical education programs, particularly for the older elementary school students who are larger and require more space to move around. Lack of dedicated office, small group, and storage space at the elementary schools has created situations in which people and things have been crammed into spaces they weren't intended to be in. Here we see a display case, originally intended to showcase student work and achievements, has been repurposed as book storage. Likewise, closets and storage nooks devoid of any natural light have been repurposed as learning spaces and offices. If you've watched the first video in this series outlining 21st educational best practices, you've seen that hallways and corridors in schools can be used as collaborative active learning spaces. They can create additional flexibility, allowing breakout space for larger group work and co-collaboration with other classes. The existing elementary school corridors do not provide these types of collaborative opportunities. In their current state, they are narrow and dark, with little opportunity to be activated as learning spaces. Here's an example of what an activated corridor looks like at McGuire Elementary in North Providence. Writing surfaces and a variety of furnishings abound in these wide open spaces, with visibility from the classrooms to the hallway for supervision. These spaces are used for special education pullout, small group work, and other educational activities. Perhaps one of the biggest physical challenges at the elementary level in North Kingstown schools is the fact that 3 of the 5 elementary schools in the districts have classrooms with no walls. While at Fishing Cove, this is only true for the addition portion of the building. At Stony Lane and Quidnesset, it is true for the majority of the learning spaces. This open plan configuration is problematic for many reasons, but perhaps most notably because the lack of acoustical and visual separation creates a distracting environment for students and can impede learning. Today, media centers in elementary schools are used for much more than book storage. Sometimes referred to as learning commons, these spaces, in addition to supporting literacy and a love of reading, are often used for collaborative work with 1 or more classes at a time. The media centers at many of the North Kingstown schools lack the modern furnishings and fixtures needed to support this kind of dynamic curriculum. Additionally, some of the media centers also lack natural light, making them less than ideal learning environments. Today, media centers in elementary schools are used for much more than book storage. Sometimes referred to as learning commons, these spaces, in addition to supporting literacy and a love of reading, are often used for collaborative work with 1 or more classes at a time. The media centers at many of the North Kingstown schools lack the modern furnishings and fixtures needed to support this kind of dynamic curriculum. Additionally, some of the media centers also lack natural light, making them less than ideal learning environments. This image is also from McGuire Elementary. Their media center is set up not only for book storage, but for a wide array of instructional activities. The upgraded lighting, abundant natural light, a variety of teaching surfaces, technology enhancements, and movable, flexible furniture make this space endlessly adaptable. It is standard practice in Rhode Island and Massachusetts to have dedicated bathrooms inside not only the pre-K classrooms, but kindergarten classrooms as well. North Kingstown kindergarten classrooms do not currently meet this standard. In this presentation, we've referenced collaborative teaching many times. Indeed, collaboration is considered one of the cornerstones of New Century education. In order to create collaborative curriculum, teachers need to have robust planning spaces to coordinate their lesson planning and curriculum goals. While all the North Kingstown schools have some teacher planning spaces, these spaces are limited in terms of size and amenities. They are often cramped, lacking proper furnishings, and devoid of natural light. North Kingstown elementary schools have ample outdoor space. Perhaps one silver lining of the COVID pandemic is that these spaces have seen improved utilization with the creation of outdoor classrooms at each elementary school. Additionally, most schools have modern play structures, green play spaces, and well cared for paved play areas. Vegetable gardens are also a fixture at many of the elementary schools. These spaces present great opportunities for future programming and development. To sum up the elementary schools, we'll look at a side-by-side comparison of the RIDE recommended sizes for various learning spaces with what North Kingstown schools currently have. At a glance, you can see that many of the spaces in the elementary schools fall below the recommended square footages. As previously mentioned, the size of the typical kindergarten classroom, for example, is well below RIDE's recommendation of 1,200 square feet per classroom at each of the 5 elementary schools. As previously noted, none of the kindergarten classrooms have bathrooms, although the pre-K ones do. RIDE recommendations for a typical grade 1 through 5 classroom is 950 square feet. Forest Park's average size falls well below that recommendation, while Fishing Cove and Hamilton are just slightly below. Quidnesset and Stony Lane have larger spaces. However, because these schools do not have any walls in their classrooms, these numbers could change depending on how the furniture designating the classroom space is arranged. Looking at the gymnasiums, Hamilton, Quidnessett, and Stony Lane all have gyms that are close to the RIDE recommendation, while Forest Park and Fishing Cove have no gymnasiums at all. RIDE recommends media centers be sized at 220 square feet for school populations of up to 300 and 3,310 square feet for populations of 600. This space allocated to the media centers at North Kingstown elementary schools are well below the RIDE recommendations. However, most of the cafeterias or multipurpose spaces are close to the RIDE recommendations for school cafeterias based on their population size. Let's switch gears to focus on the middle schools. Similar to the elementary schools, the middle school classrooms are well maintained and outfitted with current technology. However, many of the rooms lack access to natural light, flexible furnishings, adequate teaching surfaces, and have limited electrical infrastructure to support in-classroom technology. Middle school is when most districts start to incorporate more technical classes into the curriculum. For Davisville and Wickford, these outdated spaces were partially retrofitted. However, they are undersized and lack proper furnishings and modern infrastructure to support current STEM curricula. Middle school is when most districts start to incorporate more technical classes into the curriculum. For Davisville and Wickford, these outdated spaces were partially retrofitted. However, they are undersized and lack proper furnishings and modern infrastructure to support current STEM curricula. This image is of Cole Middle School in East Greenwich. Built over 10 years ago, this classroom embodies many of the design principles employed in current middle school design. Note the location of the sinks at the edge of the room, with movable work tables and chairs in the center. This provides flexibility for different types of science instruction, allowing the teacher to move from lecture to lab work smoothly. Like the elementary schools, there is a lack of small group, office, and support spaces. Space is so tight at Wickford Middle School in particular that a bathroom was converted to a resource room. Also similar to the elementary schools is the corridors in the middle schools, which are narrow and dark, with few opportunities for breakout spaces or collaboration. At Davisville Middle School, some larger hallways do exist, but they lack the amenities that would make them true extended learning spaces. The media centers at both schools are in need of updating, as they lack proper furnishings and are undersized based on RIDE standards. Both Davisville Middle School and Wickford Middle School were built prior to the Americans with Disabilities Act of the 1990s. Although both buildings have been made ADA compliant, the age of the buildings means that this had to be achieved through retrofits, such as chairlifts, meaning that often an individual with mobility issues must use a roundabout way to navigate the building because the most direct route is not accessible. Modern school buildings incorporate principles of universal design, which means designing spaces so that all people can use them regardless of age, disability, or other factors. These buildings, however, are not able to meet that higher standard due to their age and configuration, without either major renovation or replacement. At Wickford Middle School in particular, this is an exceptional challenge, where in order to get from the upper floors of the building to the lower levels, including the subgrade cafeteria, a person with mobility issues would have to walk to the elevator, then walk down the hall to use the chairlift, which is a time-consuming endeavor. Teacher planning is critical to middle school curriculum, as students are no longer with one teacher for the majority of the day, but moving from one room to the next for different subjects. These teachers must coordinate their curricula in order to provide a holistic, interdisciplinary learning opportunity. At the current North Kingstown Middle School, these teacher planning spaces are small and underserviced. They lack proper furnishings, lighting, and the equipment to support the higher level of collaborative teacher planning. Perhaps the biggest challenge presented by the middle schools is the overall building layout. When Davisville and Wickford were built, the junior high model for these grade levels was widely employed. These buildings were designed with a single corridor lined on either side by classrooms, with learning intended to take place only within the four walls of the classroom. In the last 30 years, a middle school structure has been adopted by most districts, organizing the learning environment into grade-level teams. These teams are intended to create personalized, small learning environments that foster flexible, interdisciplinary collaboration. Teams are organized with classrooms and small breakout spaces surrounded around a learning commons so that learning can happen not only within the classroom, but also in the breakouts and the learning commons, providing opportunities for dynamic, collaborative working within the team. With this structure, students stay with their own team neighborhood for the majority of the day to create a smaller community within the larger school. Studies show that this structure not only promotes collaboration, but also better supports students' social and emotional needs. In our side-by-side comparison with RIDE regulations, we see that the average classroom size at Wickford is well below RIDE's recommendations. Davisville's average classroom is also below the recommendation, but to a smaller degree. Both schools have reasonably sized gymnasiums, and the cafeterias are adequately sized as well, but the media centers are well below their recommended square footages. This district-wide master plan will also examine options for the future of the clinical day program, which is currently housed at Davisville Academy. This program serves students from kindergarten to age 22. The program is small, with less than 12 students per classroom. As with all North Kingstown buildings, the spaces have been well maintained and retrofitted with some amenities and technology, but they're dated. Davisville's classrooms do have exceptional access to natural light, however. Similar to Fishing Cove and Forest Park, this building has one large multipurpose room, but no dedicated gym and dedicated cafeteria. North Kingstown's high school is the district's newest facility at 20 years old. It continues to be invested in, with updates implemented at the cafeteria and media center, and many classroom updates as well. This space is one of the business classrooms and has been equipped with new furniture, LED lighting, technology, and new finishes. There do exist some opportunities for breakout spaces or learning commons within the high school building. However, they are not located proximate to classrooms and therefore are not utilized as such. Having been built within the last 20 years, the high school meets or exceeds all current RIDE recommendations for space. The big takeaway from the educational suitability walkthroughs are the following. First, North Kingstown has consistently maintained its facilities. They are very well kept, but they are also very old. Secondly, there are disparities from one facility to the next with regard to the type and quality of spaces offered. This is most obvious at the elementary schools. And third, these older buildings were designed and built in a totally different era, and in many cases, the limitation of these aging, inflexible facilities are impacting the district's efforts to incorporate the current best practices in teaching and learning.